I am pleased to introduce for our next presentation Karan Bhatia, the Head of Government Affairs and Public Policy at Google, and he is joined by Jane Munga, Fellow in the African Program at Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. Please.
And so I'll go straight to the discussion. Karan, it's a pleasure to have you.
Thanks so much, Jane. It's wonderful to be here.
All right. So Google has today published the AI Sprinters report and has provided a framework of how countries can harness AI to accelerate economic development. Tell us, what is the key message in this report? And do you have examples of some countries that you can consider sprinter states? And also let me say congratulations on the report.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, a little branding here. So for everybody who has not got a copy, it's outside. Well, look, Jane, first of all, thank you so much. Thanks to Paris 21 and to the bank for inviting us to be part of this. I think one of the exciting things that we are seeing with AI arriving on the scene is it's stimulating these kinds of dialogues between public and private sector multilateral institutions. And I think appropriately so, because so much of the work that actually is being done here actually resides in the private sector, and yet obviously the implications of the work and the technology are really being felt globally. And so it's terrific to be here at a gathering like this today. I will come to the report, but let me just also very quickly say that this, and I think Indramit's comments he quoted my boss, Sundar Pichai's views of artificial intelligence. And I can tell you, Sundar is not a man given to excessive exuberance about things. He's generally fairly moderate in terms of his statements, which I think should give you a sense of exactly how important we at Google feel this moment is. And it really goes back to our mission. Our mission, we were founded 25 years ago, and the mission is to organize the world's information and to make it universally accessible and useful. And over the course of the last 25 years, product by product, innovation by innovation, we have tried to live up to that mission. And I think what is most exciting about this moment to us now is this idea that AI can actually help us make that significant step forward, particularly around universality. That, of course, is going to require a very concerted effort. It's going to require concerted effort by the private sector, by companies like Google that are deeply invested in the technology, but it is also going to require concerted effort by governments and by international institutions. And that is the point of the report that we put out today. We have, the past several years, published a report that we call our Digital Sprinters series, which really looks at what are the sets of issues and challenges that governments need to take on to advance digital adoption, digital transformation. This year is particularly focused on AI, and we focus on four particular things that we think are important. The first is the infrastructure, a challenge that was sort of referenced in the previous discussion, and in particular the importance of cloud services as an enabler of AI. I think for those who are into the field, you'll appreciate and understand that the ability to do AI at scale really does depend upon a vibrant cloud services capability. So that's the first. The second is human skilling. So we are deeply invested into that area as well. Excitingly today, in conjunction with this report coming out, we are announcing that Google's philanthropic arm is going to be committing $15 million to simply focus on AI skilling in developing markets. And this builds upon a number of other programs we've got in this space around the world. So AI skilling, but again, this is a partnership, public-private, that is going to be necessary, and very much the international institutions that are represented here today. The third is really around innovation itself and government's approach to innovation, and in particular, and of immediate relevance to the audience here today, data systems. The reality of it is that artificial intelligence, as you all know, machine learning depends upon the access to data, but it also it will enable the modernization of data. Maybe that's something we can chat a little bit more about. And then last but not least, it won't surprise me to say policy, public policy. You've got to get the right set of public policies in place to allow for artificial intelligence to yield the kinds of benefits that we believe are possible. So that's quickly what the report summarizes.
Perfect summary. Before we heard about Gill's law, it was a stool. So yours is a pillar, so I see more of a house.
We've got four, right, exactly, 3, 4, so yeah.
Okay, so within this report, can you just give us some examples? Do you see some examples of either countries, what you'd call some splinter countries, or even AI applications that could be useful for AI development?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's almost hard to pick. I've gotten asked this question before, like, what is most exciting in the various ways, particularly when you think about its applicability to development and poverty alleviation. The ones that I often come up with, 3 to sort of get thinking a little more concrete. One is healthcare. The applications of AI to healthcare here are really myriad. They start, of course, with simply the ability for artificial intelligence to take that significant step up in terms of diagnoses. We are working today with hospitals around the world, medical institutions, on being able to do cancer detection, for instance, at a far earlier phase than even the best technology enables today, utilizing artificial intelligence. But that's one benefit. Another of particular relevance in the developing world context, I think, is the distribution and access to healthcare. And that's where we've been so excited to see some of the already, the innovations that are happening, the partnerships. We're working, for instance, with a group called Jacaranda Health in Kenya, for instance, about utilizing AI-enabled solutions along with very basic probes and technologies to scan for maternal health complications and to be able to distribute health to very far-flung places in ways that were impossible before. So I think healthcare is a big benefit. I think agriculture and addressing the problems of food insecurity, I think, are a significant benefit. Talking to colleagues at John Deere, as an example, which is now, it's remarkable to me, they have equipped their tractors with video cameras that are scanning as the tractors go down crop fields. They are scanning the different plants to see what is a plant and what is a weed. And they are then targeting the herbicide just to the weeds, thereby saving enormous amounts of sort of crop productivity and reducing environmental damage. So just one example, you can also look at the ability that this is something we've been working with the FAO on, locust and pestilence detection. The reality is it's very, very hard to detect when there are going to be locust infestations. AI now is able to capture and process data that historically the sets were too large, they were too disaggregated, and do a better job of predicting it, and as a result, enabling farmers in some of the poorest countries of the world to take preventive steps. So, healthcare, agriculture, and then the last one I often cite is just climate change. And we know that the countries that are most adversely impacted by climate change are often the poorest in the world. And so we have been working with governments, the Indian government, for instance, around flood forecasting. This is another subject that is extremely hard in using traditional computational techniques to be able to sort of detect when is a flood going to occur and precisely where will it occur, riverine floods, so rivers. We now have the ability, utilizing AI, to do that with remarkable precision and a week ahead of time. So we are then able to get word out to the farmers, to the villages, et cetera, to evacuate or to salvage what they can and so forth. So these are just a few examples of why we are excited about this, and there are myriad other examples that one can come up with.
Thank you so much for that. As a native of Kenya, I'm very excited to hear about these opportunities: healthcare, climate change, and what was the third one? Healthcare.
Yeah, agriculture.
Agriculture, sorry.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to ensuring that you're harvesting and there's optimum. As they say, a lot of food gets lost in the chain.
Exactly.
So this is really exciting. But I want to zero in on the data part, because we've just heard from Gil's side that the Gil law that's wobbly. I hope it's not wobbly on this other side. But I think it's a critical question about the data that we're collecting and how we're able to harness that data. So what are some of the foundational things today that are needed to ensure that data is utilized for AI to boost development? And also, how can we work to make sure that public data and official data that we have in governments is more robust, trusted, discoverable, and reusable? And I know there's an audience here from National Data Statistics. So how can we best harness that the data that's been put forth?
So I think it's one of the reasons why I really wanted to be at today's gathering with this group, because, and I think Indermit's comments got to this precisely, which is the worry that we have is that AI applications, the AI tools, will ultimately not be able to really be reflective of the world, because they are not easily able to capture all of the data around the world. Language is one issue, but simply data availability, the capability of these models, which at the end of the day, if the data is there, we can process it, and we can thereby be able to create better solutions, better understanding, better analysis that will assist policymakers, it will assist businesses, it will assist nonprofit organizations. But it does require that data be made available to allow for the.
So is it that the data is not there, or is just not?
I think sometimes it's a question of the data being disaggregated. Sometimes it's a question of the data not being permitted to be put forward. So we are working with governments around the world on this. We've seen some good examples. The Rwandan government, for instance, has had a very interesting pilot project. Different level of the development scale. Singaporean government has been quite forward-leaning in this. So we think there are some very good models there. But it is going to require resources, and it is going to require the prioritization of this as something that needs to be top of mind. The reality is that this, the whole stuff, and I say this as an alumnus of government myself, this whole area of data processing is often seen as being a little bit off the mainstream target. The reality is it is absolutely critical to being at the forefront, being caught up in and being able to benefit from the AI wave. So I think that is a key part. The other thing that I do want to mention here is AI is going to be an enabler of the processes and the solutions that this group, this audience, and others around the world are going to be able to leverage. I mean, I think, for instance, about the way we are utilizing AI right now to do things that enable better policy making by virtue of aggregating data. So just a couple of things in this regard. One is a project. So we launched the first AI center of any company that I'm aware of in the world in sub-Saharan Africa. We did so in Ghana years ago. And the fascinating thing about that has been that our Ghanaian colleagues and teammates sort of are thinking about the challenges and the opportunities of AI differently, because they are in a country that doesn't have perfect data and doesn't have necessarily the infrastructure to it. So what they've innovated was remarkable. It was basically capturing all of this geospatial data to map parts of cities that had not been mapped, very informal dwellings and so forth, and thereby enabling governments in Ghana, but also elsewhere in Africa, to deliver services to that region by having a much more precise understanding of exactly how many people there are, what the paths are, what the routes are, et cetera. So it's again, in the absence of artificial intelligence, you're not going to be able to do that. So it's an interesting way of enabling data capture to both deliver services, but also do a better job capturing the necessary data itself. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing is, I just flagged for folks, if you haven't spent time, Google Data Commons or Google Data Commons. It's a remarkable tool. We launched it last fall with the UN, actually. What it really is it's a very simple AI, not very simple, none of it's simple, but it's a straightforward AI interface that really allows the aggregation of different bits of data that are produced by government or other institutions around the world to answer questions that policymakers might not before. To be able to answer those questions would have involved half a day of sort of going in and searching this and searching that and searching something else. So this will take questions that you would normally not be able to aggregate into a single thing. So what is the relationship between per capita income in this particular county in Alabama with the climate change that we've seen coming out of metropolitan cities in Alabama, something along those lines. So it takes different data sets and aggregates them in very useful ways. So anyway, those are just a couple of examples.
It's fantastic. I love data. So the message here is data. We need good quality data. Absolutely. For this. Yeah. And especially the example you've given us for Ghana, where in most of Sahara Africa, we don't have national addressing systems. Yeah. So we see the practical applications. But on the Sprinter report, you talked about data. You also talked about digital skilling. Yeah. And digital infrastructure. And as you said, you've announced a program where you'll be doing to enhance the skilling. So I want to focus a little bit on the skilling part. So unlocking AI's potential for sure needs a certain level of skills. Mm-hmm. You have to be able to write the algorithms and so forth. So recognizing that countries are in diverse stages of digital development, especially in the global south, where internet access is still a challenge, and where their needs need to be met, basically, how can the private sector, like Google, the IMF, the World Bank, and even other stakeholders here, help to unlock that potential through AI infrastructure and AI skilling? So,
look, I think both of these are topics that, as I said to begin with, really demand that we have private sector, public sector, international institutions working together. This is beyond what any individual group can deal with. Let me start actually on infrastructure, and then I'll turn to skilling. I think infrastructure it's interesting to see the evolution that we've seen here, because it used to be that sort of the core infrastructure of telecommunications and was very much a public sector responsibility. Certainly, 40, 50 years ago, that was the case. Today, it's a fascinating thing that the private sector has really borne and is leaning into take on a greater and greater amount of that burden today. So if you look, for instance, at subsea cable infrastructure, fiber optic, high-speed internet, most of that today is being funded by private sector companies like Google to allow, for instance, our Equiano cable that we launched that is dramatically changing how the speed and the resiliency and redundancy for countries along the west coast of Africa.
Actually, I don't mean to interrupt, but I saw a report saying last couple of weeks it was very critical because there was an outage. Exactly. And that was used as the redundancy.
Exactly. I think it's happily that was not the Equiano cable, but it's a point. It's exactly the right point. So I do think that this area of infrastructure, whether you're talking about subsea cables, whether you're talking about data centers, needs to be a priority. It needs to be a priority for the private sector. It also really needs to be a priority for governments. It is such an important critical enabler. And so I would challenge, I think, some of the traditional international organizations, development organizations, bilateral organization, whatever, to think very seriously about how do you prioritize this. It still remains a tragedy that a third of the world does not have reliable access to the internet. And we can talk all we want about the benefits of artificial intelligence, et cetera. As long as that challenge, as long as that problem remains, you are going to have a third of the people who are not going to be able to benefit from this nearly as much as they should. So infrastructure, I think, is a core part of this. And just to underscore a point I made before, cloud computing is going to be a key piece of that, and that requires its own infrastructure and requires cloud-first kinds of government policies to enable it. And then on the skilling front, look, I think this is not one size fits all. I mean, the way we think about it is different levels of skilling depending upon what you are trying to do. So at a basic minimum, and a lot of the money that we're investing in, it goes to what we call the AI learners. This is rudimentary but important familiarity and understanding of artificial intelligence that many people, certainly kids in school today, need to develop, and that's a piece of it. The second is what we call AI implementers. These are going to be people in jobs today. Their jobs may not be computer science related, may not be IT, but they need to be able to take and utilize these AI tools to be able to raise their game so that they are, and interestingly, there is, I understand, a lot of uncertainty about, is AI going to displace whole categories of workers? There is no question that AI is going to be disruptive. It is going to require that reskilling. And there's some very interesting academic research recently out by David Otter about this that I would urge everybody to take a look at, which suggests that actually AI may be a great leveler in this regard, because what we are seeing is actually folks who are at that marginal end, they are lower performers. What AI is doing uniquely is actually raising their game. So it is the call center employee who's frankly struggling, who can, by using AI tools, become more secure, a greater value, do a better job, and actually have a more rewarding career. So there's that. And then the last category is what we call our AI innovators. And I think this is going to be everywhere around the world. There's going to be a room and need for folks at the cutting edge to be able to utilize these AI tools in ways that allow us to innovate.
Thank you so much for that. I like the three levels. It's of the skills. I want to come back to a point that you talked about, and this we are now winding. I know our time is up, but on the digital divide. So I want us to end on this question. So given AI's immense economic potential, there's clearly also a risk that uneven global adoption could widen the gap between countries that leverage the technologies and those that don't. What, in your view, is AI more likely to widen this gap, or can it help close it?
Yeah.
And the last part, I think, which is critical, what can, again, Google, the partners in this forum, IMF, World Bank, Paris 21, what can they do to work with the national institutions of data and also to mitigate this divide?
So, look, I go back to the very first thing I talked about, our mission. If AI does not enable more universal access to information, if it does not benefit truly everybody, I think it will be a great failure. And so we are deeply, at Google, I can tell you, we're deeply committed to a vision where it is in fact a leveler, where it is raising up the bottom of the pyramid and the developing world in particular. And the reason I'm optimistic about this fundamentally, there are challenges, but the reason I'm optimistic is I think inherent in the nature of AI, it is a little different from other things two things I would point to. One is AI is going to enable people who do not, by virtue of the multi-medium kind of way it works, right? So it's not just simply typing in queries, it is available through video. It is available through voice questions. People who cannot read, cannot write, can utilize artificial intelligence in ways that they were heretofore unable to connect into the internet. And so that's partly why I'm so excited. I think it is going to become a democratizer in terms of the ability to interact with this global body of information that the internet reflects. And the second is a little more bespoke, but it is that one of the things that we are seeing AI most used for is coding, is software development. And when you think about the barriers that exist right now, the reality is that most software development is happening in a small handful of countries around the world. There is some amount everywhere, but this again could be an enormous change, right? So simply saying to a large language model, okay, develop an AI solution, AI-enabled solution to this challenge. You don't need to be an expert in Python to be able to go out and do it. You need to be able to have the idea and be able to. And so it is going to create more localized solutions, I think, which is huge. Lastly, what is the role for the bank, the fund? Those are bigger questions that above my pay grade, I think. But we very much believe in the vision of development that I've heard expressed in this room, and that I know has, frankly, in the absence of international institutions like the World Bank, the IMF, the Bretton Woods institutions, Google would not exist today, probably. We would certainly not be what we are. So I do believe that it has a critical role to play. I think it really resides in all four of the things that we talked about in the report. I think it has to do with infrastructure. I think it has to do with skills development. I think it has to do with innovation. And I certainly think it has to do with adopting the right set of public policies.
Oh, that's a perfect summary. The 4 pillars of this highlighted in the Sprinter report. So thank you so much for sharing your ideas. Again, if you haven't read this, I think the copies are out there. Yep. And I think it's also online. Yep. So thank you so much for your time. And I also look forward myself to interacting with the AI, as you've mentioned, that I can somehow tell it to do things for me. So thank you.
Great. Thank you.